Hey there, thank you for clicking on this video. I appreciate that you're willing to watch some of these videos. I think it's a great way to communicate some things that are really important to those people who are part of Faith Reformed Church, some things that can't always be captured in a simple email or document, and have the more personal effect of, somebody's face and articulating it and hand gestures and everything. So thank you for clicking on this video. The video is intended to be an introduction to our fall 2021 sermon series that we've entitled Relationships by God's Design. It's a sermon series about relationships and human sexuality. It's actually the second video that I've produced about this sermon series. I did a little preliminary video back in August in order to set up a preliminary conversation about this sermon series that took place after church on August the 22nd. I invited everyone to stick around for that conversation and answer one primary question, just this, that as you imagine heading into a fall sermon series about human sexuality and relationships, what are your concerns about what might happen, what might transpire, all that sort of thing? And what are your hopes about what might transpire? And just wanted to articulate those things. Was really pleased with the way that turned out. We had like 50 or 60 people there, and I'm sure not everything was said, but a lot of things were said, were spoken into the environment. Felt like an affirmation of some concerns and hopes that came up just in conversations with the elders and in other individual conversations that I've had with other people, and kind of continue to inform the direction that this sermon series will take, and also informs what I want to talk to you about now. This introduction is meant to really kind of answer the question of why are we doing this and what are some of the goals? And the goals are directly related to some of the concerns and hopes that people had. So I'm glad that it's all kind of aligning. So yeah, I want to go over some goals that we have for why we're entering into this and where we want to go with it. So the very first one that I want to mention is just that I want to equip people. We want to equip people. We want to equip the people of Faith Reformed Church in order to be able to help them navigate this conversation, navigate not only what they believe, but how they articulate it, how they navigate relationships with other people, and the ways in which we do that as a whole body, as a church. And so we really want to equip people to do that. The reason I mention that as sort of the number one thing is not just because, hey, I'm a pastor and I want to shepherd a group of people to help navigate this conversation, but also because this video is just a preliminary thing that's not meant to cover everything, but meant to actually point to the fact that there will be lots of other things coming to help equip people. So I'm going to be starting a blog, Lord have mercy. And in that blog, there's going to be lots of helpful things for people like yourself to access. So being able to go through our website to a blog that will include sort of sermon synopses with some extra links. It will include an introduction to different terms that are part of the language that's part of this conversation, introduction to different resources, anything from books to articles to podcasts to videos, that sort of thing. It'll be an introduction to major voices within this conversation. And there will be some added, sort of theology. Hopefully there will be conversations with people within this church, maybe recorded podcasts or recorded videos right in here, because it's really important to capture some of the stories of the people within our own congregation relative to some of these things. So that's one of the goals. Another one of the goals is to grow our clarity about God's design for relationships and sexuality. There are a lot of perspectives out there on this right now, and so it would be a shame if your very own church didn't sort of chime in and say, hey, here's what we believe to be the Christian perspective on these things, not just what you're getting from cable news or from your favorite social media outlet or whatever it happens to be, but what does the church have to say about this? What's the historical Christian narrative around these things? And what does the Bible have to say about these things? So we really want to look at what God's design is for those things. And so I just want to invite you on that journey. I think it'll be a good journey. And it'll be a journey in which I hope every single person, no matter where you find yourself in these various conversations, whether you're part of a traditional camp or a progressive camp or wherever you find yourself, that every single person will be able to take at least one step of greater faithfulness toward what it means to follow Christ in the midst of these kinds of conversations. So that's part of my hope. So equipping people, but also growing our clarity about God's design for relationships and sexuality. And in the process of growing our clarity about that, really want to treat the topic in a holistic way that does not unduly draw attention to homosexuality. Why? Because even though a major part of there's like this current emphasis on all things LGBTQ in our society and in our local community and national community, even though there's a ton of emphasis on that, there are many other issues at stake, issues that are really pertinent to all of us here at Faith Reformed Church, issues around marriage and divorce and lust and porn and singleness and cohabitation and all sorts of things related to human relationships and sexuality. And so there's just a lot more to cover than just, hey, what do we believe about homosexuality and how does all that work? And also because all of the conversations that are currently taking place around LGBTQ issues really actually find their roots way, way, way back. And some of those roots are found in the sexual revolution of the 60s. And we really need to talk about everything that came out of that sexual revolution of the 60s, because not always has the church helped people navigate everything that's come out of that. Because since the 60s, man, a proliferation in abortion, which is not unrelated to relationships and human sexuality, a proliferation in divorce, a proliferation in porn, a proliferation in cohabitation, a proliferation in casual sex, a proliferation in all sorts of things related to human sexuality and relationships. And so we want to treat it in a holistic way. And there's no way to understand what the Bible has to say about LGBTQ issues without understanding the bigger picture of what it has to say about human beings and about relationships and about marriage in general. So that's why we're going to go that way. Also, one of our goals is to grow our capacity to live into the fruits of the Spirit, even around hard topics. So we can't talk about some of these things without talking about the way in which we engage them. So with almost any matter of real life import, we could say that at the very least, those of us who are followers of Jesus, on any matter of life import, we have, there's two things that we can, having trouble articulating this, but any matter of life import, there are two words that both begin with the letter P that help us inform our perspective on those things. One, position. Two, posture. That is, that with respect to anything of life import, we have a theological position on that, but we also have a posture with which we hold that theological position. So we have a theological position, we have a posture with which we hold that theological position. And part of what our goal within this sermon series, our goal is to impress on those who are proud of their theological position that posture is also important. And we want to impress upon those who are proud of their posture that theological position is also important. So in both cases. And we want to grow our capacity just in general to have hard conversations. So we really want to encourage you right here at the beginning, don't run when you hear something hard. Whether that hard thing is about marriage or divorce or singleness or homosexuality or whatever it happens to be about. Don't run. Engage the conversation. Stay engaged with myself and others. Join the conversations that take place during the learning hour. We're going to discuss the sermon every single week. There's going to be the blog space like I talked about. We're encouraging small groups to engage some of these conversations. There's going to be other spaces that are created. I just hope that you engage, don't run, that you actually attend those times and spaces of conversation, and that you're not afraid to ask questions and bring those questions right to the fore. That will help everybody. So another part of our goals is to really discern a pastoral approach in all of these things, because kind of like I just articulated, it's one thing to have a theological stance on all of these matters. It's another thing to have a pastoral approach to these matters. So you can have a theological stance like that, just in theory, this is what we believe about marriage and divorce and cohabitation and whatever. Then there's this there's this pastoral approach. How do we actually approach people who are in the midst of those circumstances? How do we actually approach them? And how do we help them? And all of that will also help us in leading to sort of an ecclesiological, that is like a churchy, congregational wide kind of perspective on those things, because as many of you know, our denominations and a lot of unrest. I don't have anything new to say about that right now, but that maybe in the coming days, as the dust settles within the denomination, we will want to have clarity about what we think, feel, and believe about all of these things and how we want to live out our faith in the midst of all of these things. And that will help us navigate that denominational space as well. So that's basically what I want to say about all of these goals, which then presents the opportunity for a little bit of a thought experiment. So indulge me a second. Imagine that there's somebody who came to our church in August, then didn't visit our church again until December. And so in the midst of that sort of thing, they, unbeknownst to them, we had a whole series around relationships by God's design. Totally unbeknownst to them. They visited in August, they visited in December. And the question is, will they notice anything hugely different when they come in December? And here's what I want to say about that. I want to say, in one way, I don't think they will. I don't think they will. So this feels like a really big conversation that really might have like earth-shattering effects. I actually think that the person who comes in December might not feel a ton of those effects. They might show up in December, realize, hey, these people are celebrating Advent. These people are preaching the scriptures. These people are pointing people to Jesus and inviting people to the table, and in all ways just trying to glorify God and help people live as faithful disciples in the world. So in that way, I hope that matches what's taking place already. Now, in other ways, there might be some noticeable differences. If there are differences, maybe they might notice that we have greater clarity about God's design for relationships. They might notice that we're slightly less preoccupied with the LGBTQ conversations and a little bit more preoccupied with some of the stuff that's in our front yard. For somebody like myself, who's in the midst of who isn't facing some of that sort of thing, but focusing on our own faithfulness in our existing marriages. They might notice that we've grown our ability to empathize with those people that experience life differently. We've grown our ability to love other people. We've grown our ability to navigate hard conversations. We've grown our ability, if we have a strong theological position, to actually back it up with a biblical posture of humility and love and everything that goes with that. And if we've got a strong capacity to love and be humble and all of that, that we grow our capacity to actually have a theological stance on the matter based on what the Bible has to say. Somebody who's in this sort of thought experiment might also notice that we've increased our capacity to have sort of a helpful pastoral approach to these matters. So that's what I have to say about all that. I appreciate you tuning in, and I appreciate you navigating this. It won't be a perfect walk through all of this, just like this video is imperfect, but I hope that you'll join us for the journey, and I hope that you'll engage and not just be a wallflower, not just be on the sidelines, but really in the midst of the engagement. And let us know how we can help you as we go along. Let us know how we can help you to navigate all of that. Thank you much.